I'm Monet Summers, and I'm on the sales team at SketchDeck. But I'm super excited today for you to be here with David Mack, our co-founder and head of marketing, who works very heavily with all of our clients on content, on creating and making amazing slides that are on brand. And before I hand it over to him, I wanted to share with you all, those that aren't familiar with SketchDeck. We are a company that works with a team of amazing designers and a powerful platform to deliver design quickly, efficiently, and an economical price point for our clients. We like to think of our company as like a third arm to your marketing and design team. And yeah, we're just excited to share with you what we've learned and what David's learned. So I'll hand it over to him.
Cool, thank you, Monet. This is a topic close to my heart. I work a lot with our clients on all sorts of content and design projects, and kind of making slides look great is what we've been doing since day one. It's an interesting time for this because so much of our business lives has become virtual, and slides have become even more important, as they're often the thing representing us before a meeting, during a meeting, after a meeting. So let's kick it off. How do you make a great slide? There are two main things that come together to make a great slide. You need great content and you need great design. Content, you can kind of think of that as the foundation of the house. If your content is complex, if it's hard to understand, if there's kind of too much or the wrong things, nobody is going to understand your message. You're going to understand what it is you're trying to communicate with this slide. And then once you have that foundation, you have your great content together, then it's great design that really makes that digestible, makes it as effective as possible for the receiving party to kind of understand and remember. So we're going to look at each of these two sides, look at some quick tricks, look at some befores and afters of how to transform, and we have some really cool sort of initial awful slides that we're going to turn into great slides. So let's first talk about great content. If you have too many things on a slide, for instance, that slide is always going to be complex, hard to understand. It's always going to be a slide that gives you trouble. And really, it's about thinking about what you want to say. What is the key message? Because each slide, you only really have space for one message, and then actually managing to say that. So we have an example we're going to work through here, and this is inspired by work we've done directly with clients, and is really typical of where we see projects start out at. So have a look, and you've probably all seen these kind of slides in your business lives. They're complex, they're ugly, there's a lot going on here. Looking through the slide, your eyes are probably darting around trying to figure out what does this mean? What is this trying to tell me? And we're going to improve this. I'm going to show you it step by step. But this is often the kind of state of things in the world, and there are a lot of tricks and methodologies we can use to improve this content. So it really bears repeating. There's only so much you can say on one slide. A slide presentation is a really interesting format because, sort of like Twitter, it's defined by its limitations. You have a Word doc and it's continuous and flowing, and you do have pages, but it kind of just scrolls on and on forever. Whereas with a slide presentation, each slide is this constrained small area that forces you to break up your content and forces you to think about what you're saying at each step. And when you're thinking about slides, you need to decide what it is you want to say, and then you need to say that, and you need to say just that. And we'll talk later a bit about like content density, but in general, your reader, who is ultimately the point of the slide, and also your design team, are going to greatly thank you if you can pare it down to the essential communication. So let's go back to this slide that we looked at earlier, this kind of complex slide. So after really sort of chopping through this, reading through it, talking to the client, we figured out that we figured out what this actually means to real people in the world, and what the important headline about this is. So this is some sort of automating system. And here I've changed the title just to start to communicate the most important point. this is a complex technical system, but it saves your employees 4 hours a week. Like that's what matters to the reader. So the first thing we've done is figure out that one message, and then we've turned that into the title. And we just say the most important thing up here in the boldest part of the slide. The title is where your eye goes first. It is the biggest text, and that's where we say the most important thing. And you can see this first paragraph says a lot of kind of business buzzwords that are not communicating anything of much value, or it's not very tangible. It doesn't really add much. And then we've taken this like very technical diagram and tried to figure out what does this mean to a real person? Like if you think about an actual customer that you're trying to pitch, what does this mean to them? So we pull that out, and here it is. So this is a system that automates Microsoft Office. That complex technical diagram, once we talked about it, turned out it's just they're automating things, actions in Microsoft Office. And it's, you can see this, and this we have not worked on design here. You can see, the employee on the left benefits from this automation on the right. That is the key thing that we need to communicate, and it's saving them 4 hours a week. So once we've done this foundational work, and it can often be really hard work, you really have to think about it. Often you have so many things that you want to say, and you have to figure out like which few of those things are the ones that matter to the audience, and which of those things is what they can understand right now. And I work through this with a lot of clients, and we have to really kind of, we look through the deck, and then we sort of strip it way back and say like, what is the thing we need to say here? And then we kind of rebuild it up from there. So here is the pre-design improved content. And now this slide is ready and can be successfully designed to be a really great slide. So I'm going to go through a couple of tips on how to improve your content. So these are some kind of fun little hacks that you can do with the people around you, and they will help you develop your content. So first of all, there's the kind of memory trick. So basically, you want to show someone a slide and show it to them for, say, 20 seconds or something, then take it away and ask them what they remembered. And this is really interesting because it forces the content to do the full loop of digest, understand, rephrase. And doing this, and you can do it with anyone. You could do it with your family, your housemates, with potential clients, customers, investors, and it'll really give you an insight into how other people phrase and understand what you're talking about. And then the kind of sort of simpler version of that is to literally show someone a slide and just tell them to speak that slide to you. It's really quick, it's really easy. And again, it forces that person to turn the slide into words that connect with things that they understand. And it can, like, really amazing things can come out of this. You can often take a complex slide and then find a much simpler way to state it, simply through having people echo it back. The next tip, and this is something I come across quite often when working with clients, is when we're looking at the deck at the start of our content work, they often say, oh, this slide, we kind of skip over that, or, oh, we always struggle to talk through that slide. And this is always a sign that this slide just doesn't fit your flow. It's probably saying the wrong things, and that slide needs like a deep overhaul. So if you ever notice yourself kind of like hand waving on a slide, you should probably just go and like deeply rework that slide. And then the final thing, and this is the one major point that I'm repeating throughout this half of the presentation, is you want to make like one major point per slide. This is so important. And just whilst you can make multiple subpoints, if you really focus on figuring out that 1 point per slide, that's going to set you up for success more than anything else you can do.
David, quick question. So do you recommend that people actually start developing their content in PowerPoint, Keynote, Google Slides, or should they start with a Word document? Would you ever suggest one route over the other?
Thank you. Yeah. I would advise starting with a presentation software, so say starting with Google Slides, because it forces you to think about that sort of breaking up and chunking of your content and how it's going to fit into each slide. Sometimes we outline a presentation by doing a Google Doc or and so forth doc, where we have bullet points, and we have the title of the slide, and then say 3 sub bullet points, and we do that. But as soon as you have, say diagrams and illustrations, which are a really common part of how presentations are communicating information, it's hard to put those into a Word doc the way you can with a presentation software.
Thank you. And one more question from our audience on the content development tips. Someone was asking, whenever you're showing your slides or asking someone to repeat it back to you, is it preferred to have someone that isn't attached to your business or your industry? Are you finding that a lot of people, they have a hard time explaining, new concepts to people outside their business, but within their business, it's easier for them. So maybe it's better for them to go outside. Does that make sense?
That's a really good question. So you want somebody ideally who is representative of the target audience of this document. So for example, if this is a client pitch, you ideally get someone who is a potential client who has the same kind of background knowledge, understands the same terminology, and also has a limited understanding of your business right now. And that's going to help them kind of like filter and struggle to understand in exactly the ways that your audience will, and therefore you take on that feedback and improve it right there.
Awesome, thank you. Those are all the questions for now, but we appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And yeah, questions are really appreciated through this. Really helps me kind of give you all the information that's most valuable. So we've talked about great content, and then let's flip over to the second half of this. And this is about great design. So you have your foundation, you've made your really great content, and now that you have that, you're ready to to really go to town on designing this well. And this is a good point to talk about what is great design, because there are a lot of misapprehensions in the world about what is design, why do we design, how important is it? So let's just talk a little minute about like what is design and why do we even bother doing it? So the goal of design is to make your content easy to digest. And this is really important to understand, because there's a lot of times in the world where people think they're doing design, but actually they're hurting this goal. They're making things harder to digest. And for me, this is always how I judge whether design is going well and whether people are good designers, basically. Like, is this the thing that they're making happen? So let's talk a little bit more about this. The goal of design is to make your content easy to digest. What does that mean? So there are three main principles design is trying to achieve, and these are kind of like a Maslow's pyramid. So the first thing, like the most basic thing, is that your slides and your any content in general should be easy to read. If you're writing words and people can't read them, for usability issues, then you failed. Like it doesn't matter, how beautiful your colors are or how on brand it is. If people can't read the slide, then your design's failed. And I'll show some examples of this. But what do I mean by easy to read? Well, if you're projecting this in a big hall, and I know that we've not been doing that recently because of COVID, but we will start to do that again. With the lighting, the projector, the colors, is the text easy to read from the back of the room, the front of the room? If you are putting this on mobile, is the text too small to read? If this is just on screen, is the color and the readability, and also like legibility, depending on what it is, like are those working well? And you're going to see examples in this minute. So once people can read your text, the next level of our pyramid is it easy to understand? Are people able to kind of scan this quickly with their eyes and absorb the information? And this is one of the biggest areas of design. Design is often loads of tricks about turning things into visual metaphors, into visual layouts that make this understanding easier. We can use all sorts of kind of metaphors from the world around us to show the linkage between things and how they relate. There will be examples of that in a minute. And then the third goal is easy to remember. So if someone has understood your content, that's really great, but you want them to take that forward into their lives. If you've just pitched someone to raise investment, you want them tomorrow to still remember your pitch. You want them to know why your product is better than the others. You want them to remember like why your company executes better. And that again is all about design and branding and using psychological tricks to make things easier to fit into our memory, our short-term and long-term memory. So once you've achieved all of that, then we have the final little peak of our pyramid, and having things be pleasant to look at is certainly valuable. And you can see like this slide has an unnecessary little splodge in the corner because it's quite pretty and enjoyable. And there is real value to that, and it shows that you care about details, and it shows that you have the ability to design well. Particularly if you say are a software product company, design is more and more important in that space every single year. So the design of your slides shows your company's capability to design and that you understand and value design. So making slides pretty definitely has value, but it just shouldn't come at the expense of those other points. So I'm going to take you through some examples now, and they're all in a sort of before, after, and each of them speak to one of these points. And I've made up all these examples, but they are based off things I've definitely seen in the world many times. So here is the first. Chicken AI is the farm of the future. For the type geeks, this is thin railway, a free Google font that definitely was very popular 3 years ago. And this looks pretty cool and sleek and minimalist, but it's hard to read, depending on how big your screen is. If you're viewing this mobile, this already might be impossible to read. And if this is projected, maybe you can't make this out because the white and the blue blur together. So we can do really simple things to improve this. Boom, we have increased the bold of this. I think this is now a semi-bold face, and we've increased the color contrast. So it's a darker blue to contrast to the white background. And now this is readable. We've achieved the first layer of our pyramid. So move on to our next example. So this text is easy to read. It's bold, has good color contrast. So we've achieved all of that. But now we're at the second layer of our pyramid. And this is hard to understand. Like, we offer 20% return in the first 5 years. There's kind of a lot to like calculate there. And you're like, if you're trying to compare this to some other offer, it's quite hard to figure out, like, what does this actually all mean and look like? And this is a great place where design using visuals can totally transform this. So with a little bit of refurbishment, this becomes this. We've used a good classic chart. And I've slightly changed the text just to summarize what it shows. We've used an arrow, and then on the chart itself, we've been very careful of where to put a number to draw attention to the most important point of that chart. So suddenly you can look at this, and even just looking at the chart without the text, you understand what it means. You don't even need the text. And then for good measure, we've repeated the main message underneath in a very short piece of text. So whilst there's a little bit of content, oh yeah, please go on ahead, Monet.
So sorry, quick question from the audience. They're asking, should you always lean on visuals over just hard copy, or is there like a balance of mixing it up?
Yeah, that's a really nice question. So one thing, it slightly depends on the context. So if you were creating, say, a white paper, a case study, those typically are more scholarly documents with a lot more text. It kind of fits to have a lot of visuals in there, but also some text to really get across a lot of information. If this is a presentation that you're going to give to a large audience and these slides are to sit beside a speaker, just like this presentation right now, then you want to make it as visual as possible, because every time you have text, people just bury into it, and they kind of totally, their attention is totally stolen by the text and reading it all. I would generally say if you can communicate something better in an image, then use an image, unless there's some really good reason not to.
Perfect. Thanks, David.
Thank you, and thanks for these questions. These are really good and really helpful to cover this in more information. So yeah, I'm going to move forward to the next example. So again, we have very readable text, good contrast, but again, and this isn't that complicated statement. This could appear in any newspaper, and you could easily read this. But we're designing. We can do better than this. And I want to kind of show how, with a little bit of thought of like, what are these different parts of the sentence? What are we really saying? How can we make this even more digestible and memorable? So here we go. So we've turned this person, instead of just a name, we now have an image. And this is all a made up example. You get these warm, fuzzy feelings because you've heard of them, you respect them. We've shown the company logo, which again, people are going to recognize. It's going to make this a lot more meaningful in their minds. And then we've made the quote really big and really easy to read. And we've put some little quote marks around it to make it really obvious that this text is a quote. So here we've used a lot of design tricks to make this text like feel like it's kind of make its message feel like the message. We've kind of used all these metaphors to really make the thing understandable before you've even read it. Okay, and here is our final before after. So this again is really common in PowerPoint. We have a lot of text, we have a lot of bullet points. For some reason, bullet points and PowerPoint are kind of synonymous. And it's hard to take all of this in. I'm sure you're probably kind of scanning through this as I am right now, and you've kind of got to the fourth one, if you've got the first one, and you're not sure where to go with this. And so I'm going to do a little bit of content work on this, but mostly design work. So what we're going to do is we're going to exploit the power of three. The idea that our short-term memory really likes short lists, and that a list of 3 fits a lot easier into memories than a list of 5. And then second to that, we're going to use iconography. And the idea there is that these icons also help make this kind of memorable in a sort of memory palace kind of way. And these icons, I got for free quickly this morning when I was building the slides. They're not the most beautiful icons. Don't judge SketchDeck. They didn't make these icons. So here we are. Here's our benefits slide, and it's kind of like a classic to have this 3-column big title, but it's a classic because it just works so well. Like you look at the slide, and you just instantly get it. You can see these 3. You can remember them. It's so much easier to take them in. You're not feeling overwhelmed by this list. And this is just a really simple transformation, but one that makes this slide like infinitely easier to both understand and remember. So I'm going to move forward to Q&A now.
Awesome, great job, David. So one of the first questions that came up earlier on the design side was about consistency in the slides. Do you recommend when you're speaking to your clients that, like, for example, they should have their logo on every slide, or they should have a header on every slide, or can they be different slide by slide?
You can totally break it up. Breaking it up is really wonderful because it just keeps the audience more engaged. When things kind of change around a bit, then there's something new. Like, what's this? Why's this changed? So when used in the right way, sparingly and used at the right moments, mixing up is really good. And you can see that we've done that a lot in this presentation. In terms of having the logo in the bottom corner of the slide, I would generally say don't do that by default. But it really depends on context. So if this is a presentation where someone might just come in and go and just briefly see it, then having the logo there is quite useful because they may only see one slide. But if this is, say this is a leave behind deck that you're leaving with a client or an investor, having your logo on every slide doesn't matter because they're going to start from the front because it's in their email, flip through it, they'll know the context, they already know what email it came from. So then the logo is just kind of dead weight. It's just kind of visual noise that is adding to the clutter.
Perfect. Thank you for that, David. Another question was around when you're working with clients, are you finding that they typically keep the slides, they're too copy heavy, text heavy when they're given to you, or do you find it's usually that people don't have enough on a slide? What are you seeing more when you're interacting with clients?
Yeah, it's pretty much always too copy heavy. That is the most common. One thing I hear from clients all the time is they say, say they're often founders or executives, and they say, I have so much detail in my head, and I know so much about this company, and it's really hard for me to figure out which of these bits to say, and it all seems really important to me. And that's one of the ways that we really sort of help provide value, because we're a fresh third party, and we can kind of look at this through the similar eyes to a new client or a new investor, and help them really reduce that down to a message that's more impactful. If you say 15 things, you almost say no things.
Great, thank you, David. And the last question is around pitch deck design, which I know you have a lot of experience in. Do you find when startups are coming to SketchDeck that you guys are worried more about the content side over the design side, since a lot of times startups don't really have a brand yet? And in those cases, like, what are your suggestions there when you're working with them on that pitch deck? Is it more on the copy and content, or do you really try to put a lot on design as well, a heavy emphasis on design?
I think really like both are really important, and sometimes the kind of client works through the content and just hands over the design phase to us. Sometimes we're in there from the start, helping kind of reflow, re-outline, get the content ready, and then hand to the design team. I know the design team sometimes kind of encourage the client to get a bit of content help, because then that makes the design team's job so much easier and more pleasant, because they can really make great slides once the content's in the right place. There's kind of like, well-written content never goes out of style. It's kind of like a classic, and even if the design is pretty bad, if you get your content right and you just keep things simple, it goes really far. Then like the design on top of that is with making it more understandable and also like really communicating your brand, and of course that is really valuable. But if you had to choose just one thing, it's like being saying just the right things and being very consistent and simple.
I love that. I couldn't agree more. Perfect. Well, those are all the questions we have for today. I think this was super helpful. I learned
Thank
a
you.
lot. So thank you so much, David. I believe there might be an appendix to this deck that we can send out. You can just email us. You can email me at monet.summers@sketchdeck.com, and I'd be happy to get this sent over to you. And we'll make sure we have some links posted as well for you all. But yeah, thank you so much for your time today. Like I had mentioned at the beginning, we at SketchDeck, we work with our clients on on-demand design. It doesn't have to just be PowerPoint presentations or Google Slides or Keynote and working on your slides and the content there, but it can be anything from infographics, white papers, website development, and so on. David and his team, they are amazing on the content side. And then we have an army of designers that do an incredible job bringing all of that content to life visually, and then our platform that makes it super easy to start a project, give feedback, and collaborate. So we would love to talk to you to see if we'd be a good fit for you and your team on all things design and content. But until next time, we're excited to see you again. And thank you again, David. You did amazing.
Thank you so much, and thanks everyone for attending this. It's just really wonderful to be able to talk about this stuff and share it.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Well, have a great day. Stay safe and stay healthy. Bye.
Bye.